from the Cyber Hub bunker and studio. You're listening to the CISO Talk Podcast. No sales, no bullshit, just straight talk. Straight talk. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Happy Friday. Welcome to October, everyone. There's two Jameses on your screen. Don't get it twisted. We're not the same person. We're not. Mr. McQuiggan, how are you doing, good sir?
Doing well, Mr. Azar. Always a pleasure to join you on your show. Excited to talk about, what we love to talk about, cybersecurity. And happy National Happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Wow.
Or happy, because it's not just Cybersecurity Awareness Month in the U.S. The Europeans got a whiff of what we're doing, and we're like, we want in on this. Of course, Europe's got to copy everything we do in the greatest country on earth. And so copied cybersecurity awareness. So now it's no longer national. It's really international.
Yeah. But you know what? I got a bone to pick with with Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Why do we need a month dedicated to cybersecurity? This should be a year-round thing. This needs to be all the time, not just a big focus in October. But it's keeping me busy this month in October. I can't complain. I'm going to be getting to talk to a lot of people, but I want cybersecurity awareness year all the time. That's what I
want to know why October. Is it because it ends with Halloween? Like, how creepy is that? Right?
It could be because of the beginning of the new, a lot of organizations, it's the beginning of their fiscal year. Isn't it that with the government as well?
October 1st, today is the government's new fiscal year. A lot of organizations, everyone who works within the government, also, this is their new fiscal year. They align with the government fiscal year. So yes, happy October, folks.
Happy new fiscal year.
Happy new fiscal year. Everyone tuning in, good morning to Christopher, who says he is looking forward to this one. James McQuiggan and I have a tradition that I do on the Cyber Hub podcast every morning when I do the practitioner brief. It's our coffee cup cheers that term came from Mr. McQuiggan right here on the screen. He coined that term, and I kind of took it and I said, James, would you mind if I took that term? And you were like, go for it.
Run
with it. So I'd be remiss if I had you on the show and we didn't coffee cup cheer, my friend. My double espresso.
My Tim Hortons. Cheers.
Cheers.
Now, I'm not going to confirm nor deny that this is an Irish coffee.
No. Oh, well, it is Friday. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. At the other side of the pond where you come from, it's already time for the first, Guinness of the day.
Yeah, time to head to the local for a pint. Yeah,
indeed. Happy October from Corinne. Good morning, gentlemen. Coffee cup cheers. This is Nick. Thank you for being here, folks. So everyone should know. Let me just get this prefaced out right now. The Azar residence is expanding, and we are on baby watch. Baby could be here any day at this point. So Mr. McQuiggan will kindly be taking over the practitioner brief for a few days when I am out. So the beauty of it is it's still James. So
just a different one.
Yeah, just a different one, but we keep it real. So so just so you guys know, so if you see one morning Mr. McQuiggan instead of me on the screen, we didn't do that. We are quite okay, but we are on baby watch at this point. The countdown has begun.
You don't have to adjust your set. It's still James. So the way I look at it is I will be honored and privileged to help out wherever I can. And certainly with that. So it's kind of like the Jay Leno coming in to help the Johnny Carson, right? If you're old enough to remember
that. or it could be. So yeah, Mr. Hurley is here. Congratulations to Mr. McQuiggan. So folks, a few things. We're going to get started on this CISO Talk Live. Let us know where you're from, what coffee you're drinking, questions about cybersecurity awareness, stuff that you've got around security in general. We're going to take those in. I want to kick off with the story that's kind of been trending everywhere in the industry, right? It's on every single major industry website. It's a very, very concerning story. And it's one that's going to stick around for a little bit because we're starting to see the impact of it. So this case happened in Alabama. So just so you guys know, this is from the state of Alabama. There is a lawsuit by newly parents who lost their kid, their newborn child, due to a ransomware attack on a hospital. So the details are that they went into the hospital. The hospital was under a ransomware attack. The hospital didn't let the patients know. So the hospital wasn't using technology. They moved to paper charts. They moved to classical monitoring. And what ended up happening was the umbilical cord tied around the baby's neck, and they had no way of recognizing that the umbilical cord was tied around the baby's neck.
Right.
Because typically the monitoring and the technology would let you know the umbilical cord's around the baby's neck. We've got to do this now. Anyone who's been in the delivery room before knows that's pretty standard. That tends to happen because the body's doing all kinds of stuff. It's kind of a natural thing. And when technology's present, it's not a life-threatening situation for the baby. Right. They didn't recognize it. By the time baby came out, baby had a bunch of issues. They had to operate on the baby, and about 2 months later, baby perished. The parents have now sued the hospital for incompetence on a few different things. So here's where this lawsuit gets very, very interesting. It's actually, I thought the lawyers who are representing the parents did a great job of bringing in subject matter experts to get every single aspect of it.
Okay. So
they're suing them for incompetence, and they're suing them for not declaring the fact that the hospital was under a ransomware attack. None of the patients really knew that the hospital was going through a ransomware attack. That they thought they had an IT issue. And the parents in their lawsuit state that had we known they were under a ransomware attack, we would have gone to a different hospital.
Sure.
Right? Which in that scenario would be a very legitimate thing. So it brings up a great debate at the beginning of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is who's responsible, right?
Yeah.
And I pain for those parents because I'm about to go to a hospital to have a baby. And man, did this set off like all my red lights. I'm like, well, I was reading it this last night. I was reading the entire story, and I read part of the lawsuit. The lawsuit is fairly long, as you can imagine, but the parents weren't informed that the hospital was under an IT plan. The medical staff went to using paper charts with old standards because they didn't have anything for the new way of doing things, meaning how do we do any of that? Most people didn't understand the shorthand notes written by the older doctors because no one used them anymore because they were used to using tablets and computers to do things. And so there was just a massive part of miscommunication. And to me, that is a great awareness aspect of it, which is now we've always said, you're right. One of the things we always have when we have these discussions on Clubhouse, right, is when are people really going to take it seriously? Well, we know that in Germany this year, a lady died from a ransomware attack. Although, to be fair, she was in critical condition, and there was everyone who's done the autopsy thereafter said there was no way she would have survived even if she got let down in that hospital. She was essentially dead in the ambulance. They couldn't declare it because, as I don't know if most people know, but medics can't declare a time of death. Only someone specific can declare that someone has passed away. So I'll get off my soapbox, stop talking. Mr. McQuiggan, what are your thoughts on this case?
So yeah, kind of carrying on with the issue with Germany last year with the German hospital, a university hospital. It was actually another part of the university. The cyber criminals thought they targeted, realized they hit the hospital, and then once negotiations and lawyers got involved, they actually turned it over the information. But that started on like a Thursday morning, and that person was going to the hospital, on a Wednesday morning, and that person was going to the hospital on a Thursday night. And again, and you touched upon it with the Alabama case, where a communication issue is one of the concerns here. Listening with the Alabama issue, I've been wrapped up with a lot of other projects the last couple of days, and I'd heard about the Alabama, and I appreciate filling me in with regards to what's happened. And and I quickly glanced at the article and just kind of get an idea. With a hospital, their IT systems going down, part of me starts to think, okay, let's kind of take a step back here for a second. We know the IT systems, they go down. We've been, prior to 1980, they were probably operating without computer systems, or maybe 2000, operating without the needed computer systems. And they just figured, okay, we'll step back and, keep going. What if the electricity went out in that building? What if the plumbing went out? What if they lost all the oxygen, or their oxygen supply ran out? Critical things for the operation of the hospital. What is the incident response plan? And I'm not trying to pick on that Alabama hospital, but just in general, with any type of organization, what are your incident response plan if you lose power? What's your incident response plan if plumbing goes out in the building? If you get hit with a ransomware attack? There are different things that we can do, and we've learned over the years, have different power supplies coming to the or power connections coming into the building. With your plumbing, you basically send everybody home. With a hospital, though, it's a lot harder. Do you then have, if you had a fire breakout in the hospital, well, then you got to reroute your patients. If you lose electricity, you kick over to the generators. If those run out, then what do you do? When they lose all their computers, they should have, and I don't know the full story, but my thought would have been they route all new cases coming in, get routed to a different hospital, unless the other hospitals weren't available. But it comes down to having your incident response plans, having people bought into them. In the event of a ransomware attack, what are we doing as a hospital? What are those risks that we're going to be taking on if we don't have the monitoring systems and we can't look at heartbeats? Because I know, we look at before those monitors, people were the unfortunate passing of losing little ones because that was happening. Now with technology, and we're relying on that technology for that kind of thing. And when it goes away, what's the backup plan, and what kind of risk are we exposing ourselves to? And so, and you talk about Clubhouse and the discussions we have, is it got to take somebody to die before we start taking it seriously? And we see it all the time. Whenever there's a data breach with an organization and they send out that email, their first sentence, or within the first couple sentences, we take security seriously. I bet you do, but how serious? Or you don't take it seriously enough because you've either weighed your risks and looked at, okay, can we be accepting of losing a life and being sued versus what it's going to cost? And if the costs are more than a cost of life, then there's something seriously wrong.
Well, the hospital is denying that they did anything wrong.
Oh, really? Oh.
So the hospital's taking a hard stand on this one. I do want to get to some comments real quick. So,
good.
Hey, Royal, good morning from DFW, Texas, in the house. He says this was the administrator of the issue, the IT director. I would tend to agree with that slightly. You brought up a bunch of different things, James, around incident response plans, right? And a lot of those incident response plans, if we look at them, that hospitals have, if a generator is about to go out of power, typically they pick up the call, the National Guard, the governor, someone comes in and does this. I'm a bit outraged about this story because I've read the lawsuit. I've seen the facts of the lawsuit, right? And we're not talking about a feeling. The lawsuit details, the parents not being informed. And so it kind of brings up two things. One, why isn't the AG of Alabama investigating this death as criminal negligence?
Yeah.
At best, if not manslaughter, right? Because if there was gross negligence on behalf of the medical staff, knowing that this woman's delivery was getting complicated, knowing they didn't have the tools to deal with it, and they were all complicit in it, for the purpose of revenue, so that they can get paid the insurance money for the delivery, then that's manslaughter. And the attorney, there we go. We're back. There we go. All right. Apologize. Anytime I say something hard hitting, the internet's like, we will censor thee. All right. But the attorney general should investigate that. Furthermore, maybe we ought to change the reporting rules for hospitals and healthcare facilities. when it comes to that. Because I think if one AG investigates this and there's several indictments, you bet your sweet tail every hospital there forward that's under a ransomware attack is gonna go divert. We're shutting down, only treat the patients that we can treat at the moment. Anyone who's on life support or anything like that, we need to move them. We need to find a safe way to move them. We need to build a better contingency.
Yeah. Their number one goal in a hospital is the sanctity of life, right? The Hippocratic Oath and all that. If they're thinking that they can, we can take care of this is fine, but it's got to be the same concept of losing power, losing plumbing, losing oxygen, you're losing a critical capability of what you can do in that hospital, or any organization. If you lose that critical capability of doing whatever it is you do, that critical asset, you lose that, then you've got to have contingency plans and backup plans, and that has to be all decided ahead of time. And if you're making it up as you go along, or you had this issue and this was kind of a byproduct of it, that's just, I honestly think that's the wrong way that needs to be done overall. Now, I haven't read the case like you, so you've got a lot more insight than me, but yeah, when it comes to these kind of things with a ransomware attack, there isn't a lot of transparency. There has to be more regulation, or they've got to have better plans. But I think regulation is the way to go to get things improved overall.
Indeed. Let's get to some comments. So Mr. Hurley commented about earlier, just about Baby Azar time. Indeed. Corinne goes, both James are absolutely awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chris says, congrats, James, on the soon-to-be edition. Wish you and the mother a healthy baby and a quick delivery. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Mr. Tom is with us. Great way to start off with Cybersecurity Awareness Month, indeed. And Ashley says, good morning, all, and happy Security Awareness Month, indeed. It is a very, very happy month. It's also Friday, which happens to be my favorite day of the week, right? Friday fun day is my definition of Fridays. I love Fridays very, very much. But James, we kind of look at that story, and I think that story is a good intro into this month.
Yeah.
Right? Because it touches on a few different things. One, the threat of ransomware, which is significant. It's the number one cyber attack vector so far over the last year and a half, simply because when we moved, COVID put us all on our tails and on computers instead of in person. And the moment you launch a ransomware attack, you're essentially interrupting that commerce, that communication, which is significant. Number two, it pays. People pay ransoms, and as long as people pay them, there's going to be people who are going to try to get paid, right? It used to be that we don't negotiate with terrorists. Then we started negotiating with terrorists. Now we got more terrorism, right? Because people were like, you negotiate with us, so this is a way for us to get something, right? That's why you should never reward bad behavior. So there's that aspect, right? Second one is the healthcare industry is the most vulnerable industry of all, after utilities, right? Critical infrastructure, power, water, right? So you've got healthcare and utilities that are getting hammered.
Yep. Add in education institutions, they get hit as hard. One of the other silent killers that are out there, or silent attack vectors that we hear about, but it's not as flashy as the ransomware attacks, is business email compromise.
Yep.
The billions of dollars that have gone out the door of organizations, because it's kind of that effect of they're hitting up organizations for hundreds of thousands of dollars each time. That adds up very, very quickly. It's not as flashy as the $4 million or $10 million ransomware note that an organization gets hit with. And sometimes we don't even hear about those. That Alabama one, we heard about it because of this lawsuit. Other times we hear about it because organizations are reporting to the SEC because it's an interruption of their organization. It affects the stock. So they have to form the SEC of that. But business email compromise is kind of the silent, deadly killer that's out there. Not as flashy. It's thinking back to my days in theater, it was always, Phantom of the Opera was the best show, but Les Mis was just up there. It was just as good. Everybody wanted to see Phantom, but Les Mis was the show to see. Ransomware is the flashy one that's getting all the organizations. It splashes across headlines. A business email compromise is the one that's operating and just as easy. They're getting in through phishing attacks or misconfigured systems or whatever, or unpatched systems, and they're getting in, and they're sticking around a little longer. They're watching those accounts. They're watching the email accounts, looking at policies, and then slipping in that invoice from a doppelganger style domain address. And the person in the organization sees the email and goes, "Oh, they're changing accounts. Okay." And it gets changed. Not as simple, but essentially that kind of concept. And the money goes out the door. And then by the time somebody realizes, it's 30, 60, 90 days. And the cyber criminals have already moved the money from one exchange to another, gotten it exchanged out, got their money mules, getting it into their bank accounts, and walking off with a lot of money.
Indeed. And if you don't pick it up right away, you don't call the Secret Service on business email compromise.
Yep. IC3.gov.
Yep. Ashley says, excellent point. I think many are not seeing the reach ransomware has. We've seen its ability to take down mission critical systems. Mm-hmm. That is also very, very true. We look at this month and we talk about human awareness to cybersecurity threats. I liked what you said early on in the show, Mr. McQuiggan. You said, why isn't it all year? Right. And we try to make it a year-round thing. Right. I think when you look at anything, we try to make it a year-round thing where we want to pay attention. It's just that there's so much stuff coming at us today, right, and at our users, that there comes a time where we need to kind of look at it and go, what do we need to do to adjust the stuff that we're going through?
Right. Yeah, changing behaviors is not easy, and that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with human nature. We're dealing with human beings. We've had these bad habits, or we haven't learned, what we need to do to be secure. We use our email. We have our browser. It's like turning on our TV or opening our fridge. We open it up. It works. We get what we need. We're not worrying about, ironically, you open up the fridge, and if there's something been sitting in there a little too long, the smell is going to let you know that, okay, time to throw away that block of cheese that's been there for 6 weeks. But when you open up your computer, if you see it running slow, then okay, maybe you've got something going on. There are telltale signs, but a lot of folks aren't really aware or aren't really sure. And so then they got to go trotting down to the computer store, the electronics store, or call their grandkid or a teenager to come on over and help them fix it. But we have these behaviors of, making sure we check links, making sure we have strong passwords. And we want technology out there to be able to take care of that for us. And it does to a certain extent, but there's still that human pilot that has to fly the airplane for us. We still have to be aware and have that stronger culture. And getting there, it's going to change. It's going to require a lot of behavior change, a lot of people to be a lot more aware. We hear the stories, we see what's going on. But if we can, go about having stronger passwords or using Password Manager, or maybe get the technology to make it so it's easier for us to log in and still be strong and authentic, like we've seen with Google and Microsoft. Adobe now has it where you've got to have an app on your phone and you log in on your computer, and it pops up on your phone and goes, hey, are you trying to log into this? You have to say yes to that. Granted, that is still a hackable aspect. If it's electronic, it can be hacked, but it takes that extra level, that extra step out of having to deal with MFA or having to remember passwords. You log in, and then you have that additional authentication step. So we've got technology that's helping us, but at the same time, it's got to be a change in culture overall. And that's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens, I think, in a year. It's something that does take time and generations for us to be able to work through, but we got to keep working at it.
Yeah. Ashley comments on you directly, says, agreed, you can have security controls in place, but there is still a person in front of the device we need to empower.
Yep.
Whether
that's somebody that's programming that device, using the device, selling the device, all of that's got to come into play.
Well, let's talk about cyber awareness from a different perspective. We always talk about the phishing emails, right? When people think of cybersecurity awareness, they think of phishing emails. And I love KnowBe4. There's no greater fan of KnowBe4 than yours truly. But I want to take this a different thing. I want to touch on something Ashley said. Ashley said, but there's still a person in front of the device. Now, I'm not going to ask you guys to like or comment or share, so don't worry about that. But I'm going to ask a question hypothetically, and I want you guys to sit back, think about it. How many people are sitting in an engineering, architecture, or a SOC role, operating a tech they don't fully understand its capabilities? How much tech in our tech stacks exists that's not fully integrated, that's not fully incorporated, that we think does X, but it really hasn't been set up to do X. It does Y, and we have no clue why it's doing Y. When people wonder why large organizations go through ransomware attacks or they go through a business email compromise, yeah, there's that human error aspect of it, absolutely. But the human error isn't always a phishing test or a link.
Right.
Over the last week, one of the biggest directives coming out of CISA, NSA, and FBI has been VPN, right? And there's what I like to call the great refuge of all VPNs, the one that if your organization has, just run away, just stop, quit, go home, right? Like Pulse Secure. Like, I don't know why that device, I don't know why anyone still has the Pulse Secure VPN in their environment.
Right.
Like that, horrible. Like, I don't like to trash tech. You know that about me, Mr. McQuiggan. But I've reached my capacity.
Right. And it's not just Pulse. There's been a lot of other vulnerabilities out there with regards to other products
Right.
that organization, and they've come out with the patches for them, but the organizations haven't got around to getting them patched. And as soon as that becomes known, you got cyber criminals that are sitting there on Shodan, that awesome website for looking at internet connected devices, and they're scanning, looking for which organizations have that vulnerability, and they start targeting them. And that's how we're seeing a lot of them. But Pulse is up there. You got, I'm not going to name other names, but you've got other organizations that do VPNs that have had vulnerabilities, and they've released a patch, but sometimes it takes the organizations that are using them a lot longer than needed to get those systems patched and get them up to date, or they're not aware of other devices that they've got on their network and they missed those getting patched as well. That's what we've been seeing in the various different attacks. I'll have to dig it up and maybe I'll share it this afternoon, but there's somebody I follow on LinkedIn who loves to create fun timelines. And he created one of all the VPN attacks that have gone over the last couple of years. And it's a timeline of all the different vulnerabilities and the different products. After I get done, I'll share it out on LinkedIn. But just really interesting to see all the different organizations, all the different vendors that have had issues. They've gotten a patch out, but then you got to get those folks to get patched.
Let me correct you on one thing there.
Okay.
Someone who does the practitioner brief every single day, 4 days a week. I do more Pulse Secure stuff than any other company.
Right.
Right? And it's a different CVE every single time.
Oh, yeah.
There comes a time where you got to go, all right, this product is just flawed at its core, and this is supposed to be a security product.
Right.
Yesterday, I released a CISO Talk episode with your very own CISO, Brian Jack.
Yes.
And he said something very, very interesting. He said, security company CISOs deal with everything else every other company deals with and every other CISO deals with, only we're held to a higher standard. Right? So, threat actors don't go, oh, there's a security company, we should never attack it. They go, there's a security company, let's hammer it.
Let's hammer them. Yep.
And they do. And if, God forbid, something happens to you as a security company, right? Like,
game over. Yep. Your reputation gets damaged, and then that impacts the product and the price and the organization.
A lot of different things. It can impact customers. It can impact potential revenue. It can impact partnerships. It does have quite the impact. But I think what's missing with all of this is the fact that we have to start looking internally at our technology this Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Right? We've got to start looking, and I think this is where, if you're in a position where you're operating a tool and you're not even sure that the tool is doing what it's supposed to be doing, you ought to be calling that vendor and getting them to come in to help you get that tool done. Or if not, then get it out of your environment, right? Just turn it off and turn something better on, or just block something from doing it. Put in some mitigating controls to ensure, because the biggest challenge that most organizations have isn't just a human issue of understanding security threats. It's operating security tools within specific environments.
That technical debt that they take on, and they've got all of these products, 69 different products, and they're only using half of them or not using them to their full extent. And
You don't need 69 security products.
Nope.
No one does. Right? Like this isn't the I know why some people do that. I get it as well. Because some products do one thing really, really good and everything else crappy. And so you end up having you want to get the best to address specific stuff because your crown jewels or your business operations or some critical mission part of the business is sitting, and this is the only tool that can get it done. Right. But you've got to only implement it at 25% so it doesn't hinder everything else you're trying to do across your organization.
Right.
We have to understand we're kind of, at that point where everyone's rebuilding because we're moving to the cloud, and hopefully within 3 to 5 years, those IT deficits that exist today will be gone.
It's one of the things I used to talk about years ago when back in my days of industrial control systems was being able to utilize different levels of technology or different products within going down different levels within your organization, getting down to the control system. Because if you use the same product of firewall all the way through and the vulnerability comes out and you miss one getting patched, it's that single point of failure. But to have, one particular firewall that you use for your outer perimeter, and then you have a different firewall that you use for your inner perimeter to your ICS, while it might give you more, you have to have more maintenance contracts and everything else, but it reduces that risk of, if there's a vulnerability on the outside, then they can't get all the way through to your control system, because that was kind of that is the crown jewels inside that ICS environment. So, but having the different technology, when you have too much of it and you're not using it to its full extent, becomes an issue. But at the same time, if you have the same product all the way through, once they get in, then they can exploit that product across the board throughout the entire organization.
I'm curious. Let's take this question from Eddie, and then I'll ask mine. We do this so that not only you and I can talk, but also we can take this. So this is from Eddie. I want to know, Mr. McQuiggan, did you hear about the Allen ISD got hit by a ransomware attack and made the news in the DFW area? They are investigating. Any thoughts?
I haven't heard of it, but most likely. But yesterday I did I recorded a webinar talking about education institutions and why they get hit so much in cybersecurity with ransomware attacks and phishing attacks and everything else. And one of the biggest things with education institutions, and here we're talking about in the independent school district in Allen, where most likely, school districts are already stretched thin when it comes to finances and budgets as it is. Added on to that with the stress of everything going on in the schools right now, not talking politics, but with the mask mandates and yes, no, don't want it, we want it. You've got teachers in these environments. You've got teachers already stressed out enough as it is, plus, what they're having to deal with. Then you've got their IT departments where it's usually an IT department of one in some of these schools. And some of the schools are sharing an IT person across the board. They might get some sort of training every year with regards to security awareness. But one of the things that we've noticed in some of the research that was done that came out of this was, a lot of these schools, they're stretched thin. They're, you've got limited resources, limited budget, and they are constantly getting attacked more than a lot of the other industries. It's up there with the healthcare and the utilities, but the successful attacks are happening because within that education environment, they don't have a strong security awareness, a strong security culture. And so the cyber criminals are a lot more successful in those attacks getting into the schools. And they get into the schools and people think, okay, so what? They're getting all the grades? No, they're getting in and they're getting all the kids' identification information, all that personal identifiable information of the students. It might not be usable now, but it can be sold, because unless they all start getting new social security numbers, which we know isn't happening, in another 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that's going to be usable for getting credit cards and selling them off, or even selling off the information now. They're an easy target. They're a low-hanging fruit. They know that they can get people to click on links, enter credentials. And they're not the first. We had Baltimore was hit. We've had Broward County in Florida hit. We've had the Clark County out in Nevada that was hit, and they were ransomwared. They said no to the payments, and they released all the records and information that they had stolen. it's kind of like the hospitals, where there's kind of like a moral dilemma. Yeah, you rob a bank because that's where the money is. You're attacking a hospital and the education system because you can steal the data and sell it. But it's kind of like the crappy way to go. And I'm trying to be good with my words here, but your education systems, they're trying to educate kids. You've got hospitals trying to save lives, and they're constantly being under attack. But unfortunately, they're showing them that your security program and your features and things you've got set up aren't secure. Your people aren't trained and educated. And again, those are the environments that we have to increase that culture as well. Not just all the other organizations and industries that are out there, but specifically those two. But I'm a college professor. I work part-time at the college here in Orlando. My wife is semi-retired grade school teacher. I've seen what teachers go through on a daily basis. We have a lot of teacher friends, and I hear the horror stories for them. And when I sit there and go, okay, well, if we could get them security awareness training, they're like, great, more training. This is not an easy thing to fix within them, and it is something that has to be done on a culture level, on a behavior level, and getting them more of that awareness, and not just make them do it once a year, but more on a regular basis. But it's the education system, they are a big target.
So just to kind of give you folks a little bit more of what's going on here with what Eddie had said. So the Allen Independent School District was held for ransom. They did not pay the ransom. They refused to pay the ransom.
Not negotiating with terrorists.
They don't negotiate with terrorists. There's no proof, and the threat actors will not show any data to prove that they've downloaded it. And they can't find anything forensically to prove that they've downloaded any data. So we've seen these type of attacks previously where they'll claim to have data and then they don't.
Right.
And so that is
if they're not willing to show the data, this could just be a scare tactic, like kids phoning in and saying that
voters head to the polls to weigh it.
They've might be calling up because they don't want to do a test that day, so they call up or they send an email in or do something. But they don't have. Well, with the ransomware attack, they would have known they were hit with ransomware, or was it called in?
Yep. They call everything ransomware nowadays, which
right. It's the big thing.
But I do want to talk about something else that yesterday entertained me for about 3-4 hours. Everyone knows the hacker group Anonymous, and we call them hackers because depending on what side of the political aisle you're on or on the social justice side you're on, they're either your friends or they're the enemies of the state, right?
Right.
But they did something amazing yesterday. They actually hacked the Chinese government, hung the flag of Taiwan with the Taiwanese national anthem on a Chinese government website.
Wow.
How about that?
Interesting.
A big, bold move from Anonymous targeting China because, typically people don't like to go after the Chinese government. They've got resources of, I think, 150 to 180,000 cybersecurity folks within the different branches of their cyber directory.
Mm-hmm.
They've got red teams and blue teams, and they've got, they've got APTs for hire and whatnot. So very, very brave from Anonymous. But again, another thing to kick off Cybersecurity Awareness Month is if you look at what's going on, website defacement is still a thing. Yep. DDoS, in the last week or 10 days, we've seen two of the largest DDoS attacks in history of the internet, right? Cloudflare, both talking about both of those very, very openly. And I wish more companies were like Cloudflare. Hey, we stopped this, 18.2 gajillion bits per second attack on this website. And you're like, oh,
wow, really? Okay, good to know.
Yeah, good to know.
Well, that's kind of one of the other tactics they're doing with the ransomware attacks is hitting you with a denial of service attack. So that way it makes it harder for you people to visit your site or for you to get communications out or get your Bitcoin. Yeah, that's kind of the new tactic they're doing.
Also this week, the U.S. and Russia traded convicted hackers.
I saw that. That was interesting.
Alexei Barkov, who, was in the middle of of a thruple essentially between Israel, the U.S., and Russia. Came here, was convicted, sentenced to 9 years, served about 1.5 years of his sentence, and he was shipped back to Russia. And a U.S. hacker who is unnamed was brought from Russia to the U.S. Could this be a Snowden type of move? Where, there's some back scenes negotiations going on to get Snowden stateside. Very, very interesting to see that trade, because the U.S. and Russia battled over Burkov for 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting.
Right? So for 5 years, we battled over Burkov because he got caught when he took his girlfriend on vacation to Israel.
That's why they picked him up.
And the U.S. issued a red notice. Israel picked him up. And then Israel had pressure from Russia to release him. And in fact, the Russians even arrested an Israeli-American citizen for having a little bit of pot in her luggage as she was coming back from India.
Oops.
And sentenced her to, I think, 9 years in jail for that. And then Netanyahu, at the time, who was still the prime minister, got her out. Had asked Putin to give her clemency, and Putin gave her clemency, and they sent her back to Israel. So all kinds of stuff that's been going on in the last week or two, Mr. McQuiggan, that really are starting to show the geopolitical aspect of security really come into play here, especially with some of these ransomware attacks and who they're going after. Right. Going after school districts has a very, very specific type of impact on a community. They're going after large, affluent communities. Clark County in Nevada, large, affluent community. Broward in Florida, large, affluent community. So many of those. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's, given any week, we always have a lot going on, and that's certainly, we've been seeing that over the last year, as you were saying, certainly with a lot of folks now working from home. The number of phishing attacks has quadrupled. I mean, phishing is constantly, we're always dealing with it. Why? Because it's the low hanging fruit. Why? Because people still click on links. It wasn't that long ago you were talking about, we still had people falling for the Nigerian print scam. And getting that word out and getting that education and making people aware, it's going to take a good generation before, it really starts sinking in. But then the kicker to that, all of it is we're not teaching it in the schools. People aren't really learning about cybersecurity. Either they hear about it in the news, but there's no formal education. And it's one of the things that I wish I could do as a college professor, is be able to teach to all the students at the college about cybersecurity, cyber safety, and that awareness to help drive that point across. And, a lot of times people are going into colleges, and unless they're taking an IT or cybersecurity class, they don't learn about it. But because computers are such a major part of what we do every day, whether it's in our hand, whether a phone, it's a tablet, it's a computer, or it's a device that we're working at site, we're really not getting enough education, getting it into, our understanding of everybody, so that when they go off to college or they're in high school, they're learning about it from a cyber safety standpoint, so that we can, prevent the phishing attacks, which leads to ransomware and business email compromise. If we could secure the human and that human element and reduce that significantly, I think we'd see a lot less attacks, and then the cyber criminals will be figuring out new ways to try and get into organizations.
Yeah, I think we're on the verge of seeing some sort of shift that's going to happen here. I think next year is going to be the tipping scale in cyber warfare. And we're seeing that ramp up, right? We're seeing the ramp up of conventional warfare and cyber warfare. And it used to be that you'd knock out the communications of your adversary pre-attack, right? So that they can't communicate one to the other. Today, you disable a satellite. We all operate, all of our communication.
You drop an EMP somewhere, and it really gets worse.
Yeah.
Did you see the same comment I did?
I did. Mr. Falone, when these two James come together. I know, I do too, man. I can never get enough of Mr. McQuiggan on the show. So
I'm the OG. I'm one of the originals, right?
you are one of the OGs. You absolutely are. James, what is kind of like one tip you would give people on the first day we kick off National Cybersecurity Awareness Month? What's one thing you tell everyone to kind of take away?
And I tell this not to the IT folks or security folks, because you already know this. The tip that I like to, one of my favorite tips to talk about to people just in general is Google yourself. I know it sounds weird. Put your name in Google, surround it with quotations, put your phone number in, do a search on your phone number, do a search on your mailing address. Now, people think, oh, great, now I'm giving Google the information. They already got it. Let's put it that way. But Google yourself. Have a look and see what kind of information is out there about you. You know, it'll probably pull up your LinkedIn and your Facebook and your social media accounts, but it might also start pulling up other public record information. And by going out and looking at what kind of information is out there on you on the internet is one step to getting that awareness. Because cyber criminals, if they want to come after you, that's what they're doing. They're looking on Google and search engines and searching information about you and collecting more and more information and then using that to attack you. So from the perspective with Cybersecurity Awareness Month, be aware of what information is out there about you. Make sure that you're okay with it, that it's out there. And if it's not, and if it's on particular websites and you want to reach out to those websites and ask for it to be removed, they have a lot of the times they have contact information on those sites that you can go through and request that. But it's important to be aware of how much information you're putting out there, along with social media with regards to, you know, whatever your favorite platform is, making sure that your accounts are private, that whatever you're posting, you're fine with, and that if it showed up on a billboard on the highway, that you would be completely fine with it. Keeping those in mind and doing that on a regular basis is going to certainly keep your awareness up and hopefully grow that culture of a little more security-minded folks out there.
Yeah, indeed. That is a great piece of advice. I do want to wrap up our live stream. We're almost out of time anyways.
Yeah, holy cow. Time flies when you're having fun.
It's been about 50 minutes or so, but Fridays I like to give people a little break and not go the full hour too.
Because we could go for another hour easy.
Yeah, I mean, these conversations can go on forever. And on Clubhouse, sometimes they do. So if you're not following on Clubhouse, just so you guys know, I host The Other Side of Cyber with my awesome co-host, JJ. That's Monday and Thursdays on Clubhouse. That's Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern, Thursday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern on Clubhouse. If you can make it there, great. Go to Clubhouse, look The Other Side of Cyber. JJ and I host a bunch of great rooms there. You guys can definitely tune into that. Mr. McQuiggan on Wednesday mornings at 7 a.m. has the best club in
best room on Clubhouse.
Yeah. And it's great. I was lucky that he asked me to be on the show as well there.
Personally.
I was. Thank you. And I appreciate that. Go check that out as well on Clubhouse. Follow both of us right here on LinkedIn. You want to get some information. And there's a lot more. I want to get to Mr. Falone's question right before we wrap up, which is how can we provide more awareness to schools and students? And I think we have to stop thinking of awareness and we have to look at how do we implement cybersecurity into the curriculum. Yep. So this goes to the school board. Simply from this perspective, folks, school boards are where curriculums and stuff like this get set. And the people who typically run for school board have no reason to be on a school board. So for all, I said this in November of last year, right? Like post election when people were like, well, what? It's like, well, everyone's so focused at the federal, no one's looking local. Right. Local elections are next month, folks. For a lot of places in this country, you've got your local elections. And running or voting for someone who upholds the values that you have from an education perspective for school board is just as important. This isn't about a party issue. It's about a value issue. Does the person who's going on the school board really understand what we need to teach our kids going forward?
Right.
And are they willing to be the voice of change there? Because we're still teaching our kids stuff that no other country in the world teaches their kids anymore, right? Why don't we have a computer in every classroom? Why do we not have basic scripting classes as electives in every single school, not just private school or the very affluent communities, right? We have enough people to teach these now because there's enough people who are started in scripting who are now retiring who would love to go and teach a scripting class 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. They would absolutely. I know many people who are semi-retired who are just like, give me something to do, right?
Yep. Now,
knowledge, everyone has value,
right.
is how I see it, number one. And number two, if you don't find someone on the school board, then you be there and go to every school board meeting, by the way.
Right.
Like go to every school board meeting, prepare a 60-second speech or whatever it is, and get her done.
Yep. One kind of, you're looking at it going at the school board, which is where a lot of the change is going to happen. But if you're involved in your school locally, one of the things, and I would be remiss if I didn't say it, one of my other side hustles is I'm on the board of trustees for the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. You can find them at imcybersafe.org, and they have a variety of different programs available for elementary school kids, middle school, seniors and parents, tip sheets, best practices. They even got some PowerPoint presentations. We have the Garfield kit. We teamed up with Garfield, and they've got these kits that can go into schools that you can get and at least, start helping. Sometimes if we got to start with a trickle, then we start with a little bit, but if you work with your local school, if you've got kids in those schools, then, help them get those kits or get them that information. Or if you're a security professional, then go into those schools and talk to the students. I know I've done it for a number of years. When my wife was teaching, I would go in and talk to the students, and they would just be so surprised, especially on social media, when they would start posting things, and we would talk about what they should be posting and what they shouldn't be posting and what cyber criminals, we'll just classify them as that, are looking at. And, you may not realize that you might be talking to 12-year-old little Ricky, but it's actually a 38-year-old guy named Bob. Sorry if anybody's named Bob, but Bob, who's a pedophile. He's grooming the kids. And we've heard stories like that.
Are you telling us something about your co-host on the Best show?
No, I just picked the name Bob. It had nothing to do with that. It's what you get when you're thinking on the spot. Well, hey, I could have said George, and that would have been something different. But yeah, no, it's important. And those kids, when I would talk with them, the number of times that I would see their eyes widen. I would talk about when you post that selfie of you, at home, and you've got the geolocation tagged in there, and now they can go look and see where you live. Do you want these people coming around to see you? And their heads would shake no. So again, it's that awareness, bringing that awareness and understanding, but getting those kids educated. But the school board is what's going to do it, that independent school, those school districts and the school board, if we can get it changed there. But definitely, if not, then, as individuals, we can go into the schools and find a way to be able to talk about it. So,
I say you got to do two things at your local school if you have that relationship, if you don't want to do the school board thing, right? Number one, go talk to the teachers. Separately, go talk to the students.
Yep.
And don't get all the students in one general assembly. Take a PTO and do something for a good cause and go in there, because you got to speak to different levels of kids in different ways, especially in elementary and middle schools. That's equally as important. Folks, that's it for us here for 6 o'clock live stream Friday. If you haven't caught it, all right, if you haven't seen yesterday's episode with Brian Jack, the CISO over at KnowBe4, it was the first time I've ever had a CISO from a vendor on the show. Magnificent. Great episode. My episodes are much shorter now, by the way. People would always say, James, your episodes are like an hour and 15 minutes. They're about 30 to 40 minutes today. Go check them out. Still same all great information, just without all the fluff that you would enjoy before. So go check it out. Really cool conversation with Brian. So check that out. Go to our YouTube channel. Practitioner briefs are here every single day next week, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. live, where you're watching us right now on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Go check it out. Make sure you're with us 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every single day. 10 minutes of the most critical.
And be there for coffee cup cheers.
And for, indeed, coffee cup cheers. This is an espresso cup. You know, I don't drink Nespresso anymore. Like, I don't drink the Nespresso capsules.
Okay.
I drink Illy, but Illy will not sponsor and send me new cups, and I'm not paying $60 for 4 new glasses. They're going to end up sponsoring, and they're going to send me free stuff. I won't let them get away with it. But, folks, that's it for us here. Let's sign off. Have a great and safe weekend, everyone. October's here. Fall is just around the corner, so go outdoors. Enjoy a bit of the weather if you can, and spend time with your loved ones, because we know that security never ends, but our family's just as important. Thanks, everyone. And Mr. McQuiggan, thank you for being on the show, sir.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right, folks, stay cyber safe. Cheers.
See y'all later.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. And get all the latest information at cyberhubpodcast.com.